Here we are. Welcome to the stream. Got our host here, Justin Bricklen. Here we go.
Welcome to the Thunderdome.
We'll do it live. We'll do it
We'll do
live.
it live.
All right. So I would like to welcome everyone to Romanax webinar. This is our first time doing a live webinar, and then I'll let our host take it from here, introducing Justin Bricklen.
Hey, what's going on, guys? We are here with the owner of Romanax, one of the most prestigious dental labs in Florida right now. So, especially in the digital realm,
We're getting
uh,
there. We're getting
we're
there.
getting there, right? You're getting there. But yeah, we're gonna start this webinar live. We're gonna do it live. So, we're gonna have a lot of fun. So, if you want to jump in comments, ask us any questions. You have a wealth of knowledge, like years and years, what, over 40 years of experience on digital, traditional, CDT. You want to get your NAADL, any of that information, you have it at your right here at your doorstep. So if you have
I
any
like it.
questions, jump in and ask because what other better time to kind of pick our brains. You won't see us much, but I'm in Colorado. Rome is down in the beautiful state, sunshine state of Florida. So
It is nice.
uh,
It is nice
it
right
is
now.
nice. I
Colorado
miss
was
it.
nice too, a couple weeks
Yes,
ago.
yes.
Congratulations on your retirement, Justin. That was an amazing experience. Once in a lifetime. You did it right. You did it right.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's just hard to breathe here sometimes, being a Southern guy. The air is very, very thin. So we're
Yeah,
going to make it happen.
we did. We did. We will.
All right,
All
Roman,
right.
you ready
Let's
for
hop
this?
let's hop right in. It's time. So let's go ahead and move into our main presentation here. Appreciate everyone coming in to join us. Let's see here. So, obviously, we're going to talk about success with 3D printing. Justin and I, we've been working with 3D printing technology in the Air Force for over a decade, and then 3D CAD CAM for like 20 years, right? Plus each. So, yeah, like Justin said, now is the time to ask questions if you got them. We're going to go over some key topics here that we have our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about Romanax, kind of dive into how we started. Let me go back a little bit on the agenda, Brick. We're going to go into why we're doing 3D printing. Why is it beneficial to do that in your dental practice or dental lab? And then we're going to talk about some keys to success. Making sure that the process is smooth and easy. Because if you don't, 3D printing can actually be a little bit of a mess if you don't get that right. So it's good to have a solid plan to work through. And then how to get started if you're looking into 3D printing or if you've already been 3D printing and want to expand your operations. We're going to dive into some resources at the end. I'll let you take over here, Brick. Go ahead with the next slide. All right. So, Justin, you started dental in the Air Force, just like I started Romanax in the Air Force, and you were a dental assistant though first, right?
Originally I was a pararescueman, and then I went to dental assisting. Um, yeah, it was a big change of speed. I learned a lot. I learned the number one thing that I did want to ask you, but it's going to be up later, is that relationship that you build with that provider, right? Is very important. Either your assistant, a hygienist, or a dental lab person. I learned the art of knowing what my dentist wanted without him actually having or she actually having to tell me what uh, in their mind they needed. Either as forehand dentistry, dental lab support, or even as a prophy. For all those dental people out there that don't know what a prophy is, it's just cleaning teeth. Um, but over the years, at least for 6 years, that prepared me for what was to come for the rest of my career in the dental lab field. So, um, yeah, 21 years in the dental field. It has been a lot of ups and downs and trying times, and um, it's an art. I mean, at the end of the day, we should all be considered artists. we're trying to make the impossible possible, and we do a very good job at doing that, especially in the traditional mindset. But the digital realm is here, and that has taken a lot of the load off of dental lab and providers at the same time, because we can incorporate a lot of our um, tools, such as radiographs or CBCTs, to get a more accurate, detailed presentation of what we want in the future. So yeah, that's a little bit about my background. And if you have any questions, please just post them in the comments,
Yeah,
and we'll
you
get to
you
it.
touched you touched on something really good, Brickland, and it was that communication between the technician and the dentist, and the assistant too in that aspect. But when you're fabricating an appliance or a prosthesis, that communication between the dentist and the lab tech is key, and that's really what prompted me to start Romanax. Like I said, it started in the Air Force, and you saw it. You saw there was that huge need to be there, and I think it can get a little more difficult on the civilian sector when it comes to bridging that gap of communication. It's easy for the lab, for the Air Force in the lab, um, because when we were in the Air Force, you got the lab right next to the DTR, and so the dentist would come in, give you feedback immediately, and maybe make some corrections, and then back and forth. Not every dental clinic out there in the civilian sector has that benefit, and so when I was seeing that gap that needed to be filled in the Air Force, I was like, hey, we should really focus with the dental provider in mind when we're doing these appliances, and then they focus on the patient. So it's like a win-win all around, right? I think you touched that
Yeah.
very keen on there. And seeing that, that's when I decided, hey, I'm gonna start a lab that focuses on the dental communication between the provider, the technician, and then of course the patient. And with that, that's where Romanax came about. Started in Wright Pat Air Force Base in Dayton. Justin, you went there in a TDY, but you weren't ever stationed there, right?
No, never was stationed there.
Yeah, yeah, you missed out on 4 seasons, but definitely a really much slower kind of pace. Operations weren't that busy over there. We did have a residency for the dental side, but it wasn't as busy as like San Antonio or even Colorado Springs. So it was a good training environment. Um, uh, I think that's where I saw the first 3D printer I've ever seen in the Air Force. That wasn't like a huge, $200,000, $300,000 3D printer. I think it was like a Formlabs Form 2, and it was like a few $1,000s. So it wasn't a lot, but it was sitting in a corner and it was collecting dust. And I was like, hey, we need to put this thing to use because they just left the schoolhouse where we were stationed at as instructors. And I'll talk a little bit about that. I'll ask you some questions about that too. And then I said, hey, what's this 3D printer over here? Let's go ahead and put this to use. And that's where I kind of got the mindset of, hey, communication with the dentist, with the patient, and then how do you get that to the actual physical form was you use 3D printing technology. Did some cool stuff while I was in the Air Force, but some of the coolest stuff was working with you, Justin. We got to do some fighter pilot mask, custom face plates, at least some prototypes. I know there was another initiative, much bigger initiative that kind of took that way beyond what we were doing, but it was a good having a little piece of that, testing it out on the T-38s, and you allowed me one of the most fulfilling experiences in the Air Force, which was being able to fly in that T-38 as a thank you when we were helping them develop that. And then my retirement photo right there, that's you were the narrator and the host of that, so you're just narrating and host everything and every which way. I appreciate you, brother. And yeah, that was a great honor you paid me at my retirement there. At the very top, this is the analog method of doing lab, and we're kind of moving past that, like you said. When we were doing training at the schoolhouse, we we were kind of always forced to be a CDT at the schoolhouse, right? Can you elaborate and explain a little bit about that, just in the schoolhouse environment and how we worked there together, what our role was?
Oh, well, um, on the spot. So when we were instructors, one of the, if you were lucky enough to get selected for that special duty, so it's what they call a special duty assignment. So it's outside of your realm, outside of your scope. You become an educator. And so part of that, they wanted to ensure that you had all the training and you were proficient enough to be able to train the future of the next generation of lab techs. So they put in place, after you were selected, they gave you an option. Either get your certified dental lab certification um, before you went to the schoolhouse, which is down in Metsi in San Antonio, Texas, or they gave you a time frame. You got 1 year to get it done. It's the same thing if you didn't have a bachelor's degree and they wanted, or a CCAF. I should go back and say CCF instead of bachelor's degree because a lot of the people after they started the CCAF, they went on to do bachelor's degree, which I'll ask you about a little bit later, Roman. But once we got there, all our Air Force counterparts were required to have a CDT. If you were not able to obtain it, then you were removed. It wasn't like if they weren't playing games. They wanted to make sure that the people that they assigned to be instructors had every certification possible and actually knew what they were talking about. So, to go in a little bit in depth, to pass your CDT, there's two written exams, and then you had a hands-on exam to uh, present your judges. I call them judges. To see if you actually pass the requirements. So is it functional? Is it sanitary? Is it cosmetic? It goes all before you even start. They tear it up in front of you. Especially if you did Crown and Bridge, they would take it and they break it, or you would have to figure out how you were going to fix it. So not only did you have to create it, but you had to fix it. Um, so all of this rigorous, you know, test that you had to go through, that solidified and gave the confidence to the instructor, supervisors, and the staff that were above you that you were training to the requirement, to the standard that was needed. So a lot of the dental labs out there, not saying all of them, but a lot of the dental labs out there, they had that initial military background training. You'll see them in Avaclar. I mean, if you ask an Avaclar agent or if you ask any of these reps that sell a lot of the providers anything, they're going to have some kind of military training in their background because it's not normal for it's very rare and it's very hard to train somebody just off the street. It's not impossible. I've seen it. Um, but it's very important to have those things in your tool belt when you go into the schoolhouse, especially when you're talking about advanced training. Me and Roman were advanced trainers. We taught people that came back from the career field that wanted to learn something more advanced and or they couldn't get their upgrade training, so they relied on us heavily. But we're talking about hours and hours of training. Whenever you come in, we blocked it out. Like we had dentures for a month, and then you rolled right into removable for a month. Then you went to digital and fixed for a month, and then you went into ceramics for a month. And if you were lucky enough to get through all of that, then you went into your military specifics. So it was more of a Air Force, Army, and Navy training environment. So we taught the three services. Marines didn't have; they kind of more rely on the Navy for those um, services. So we provided it for the if you really want to put it out there, the DoD. I mean, we trained for 7 MAJCOM, so that's every combatant command out there. They're able to put soldiers on the line and give them the treatment needed. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, especially for 4 years. Um, and along with that, you got your the ability to do your education. Like if you wanted to become a teacher in the future, you could use the information and the education and the training that you were taught at that location to push you into the future. So I don't know.
Yeah.
What's your takes on it, Roman?
Yeah, I think you touched on it really well. You know, it was rigorous training, and then specifically how it pertains to Romanax is we have three former instructor CDTs on staff. Yourself, Justin, myself, and then also Jacob, who's out of Tampa. He's coming back in the fold, and he's settled now. And so, you know, we're excited to utilize that expertise and really expand that to our virtual team. And we have, you know, team members in Texas, Colorado. We have some admin team members in Canada that help us with like you know inventory, and then we have our core team here, which is our production lab in Destin, Florida, which is where we do all of our printing and processing and shipping out. So it's like I like to think of the mindset that we learned in the Air Force, Justin. Um, it's centralized control and quality control, decentralized execution because we have a solid work of virtual team members that are that are there to help us out. We also rely on partner labs, partner milling centers to help us out too. Right Bite Dentures out in Oregon. Robertson, I don't know if you ever met him, Cliff Robertson. He's a denturist along with Tyson Klafke. They were instructors with us when it came to the medical education and training campus. And I learned a lot from them while they were there. And so they got the dentures that we collaborate with from time to time. So shout out to them. They're an awesome group and they have an awesome practice over there as denturists. So we have a great network of virtual team members that help Romanax be successful. Moving on to that, our all of our workflows pretty much rely on 3D printing. And so someone might be thinking, okay, so why do I want to 3D print, doing analog, which is how we were trained at Metsi, right, Justin? Doing analog is working for me. Why do I need to switch? And here's the main three reasons why. If you haven't made the switch, it's time to make that switch. Or if you're looking to, maybe you're only 3D printing part of your workflows and you're not sure about going the rest of them. These are three reasons why you would want to really expand your 3D printing operations. The number one reason, it's cost efficient. Over time, 3D printing reduces the reliance on expensive lab fees, resource outsourcing fees, milling fees, material fees, and enables dentists and lab techs to produce items on demand with really really cost effective resins, and other materials that are coming out. I mean, the materials that have been coming out have been growing by leaps and bounds the last few years. The resins are getting stronger, the resins are getting more aesthetic, more translucent, and then the overall expandability of the different printers out there. There's a lot of different brands to pick from, but overall, it's bringing down the cost of production of these appliances by a great deal. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is a faster turnaround time. If you look at milling, for example, when you're milling out a hard night guard or you're milling out a crown, you're doing a lot of reduction processing, meaning you're taking a burr and it's going around reducing all the areas you don't need. That's a huge waste. Whereas 3D printing, it's very efficient. It only does the layers that it needs with some supports, and it's very fast. So I know that milling out a hard night guard when we were in the Air Force, it was like, 45 minutes to an hour. You can 3D print a hard night guard within 15, 20 minutes. So that's already down by half. And when you compare that to doing it analog, you know, you're looking at like, you pour the model up, that's going to take an hour, right? And then you gotta do the block out. You got to do a design, either if you're doing a wax design or if you're sprinkling, that takes a little bit of time. That takes a lot of proficiency too. And then you got to wait for that to cure. Curing alone is like 20 minutes in a pressure pot, right? And then you got to finish it. And I really don't miss finishing those hard night guards. The occlusion was always off. Justin, did you ever have an occlusion that was good with the traditional hard night guards right off the bat?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And then it comes back. It's like, oh, this is wrong. I'm like, oh no, what
So,
happened? And I'll blame the
yeah.
assistant. Oh, it's bad impression.
So there's a lot of variables in there, and it is much faster to 3D print these appliances out. Lastly, it's a scalable solution. You know, Unlike traditional methods that require like years and years to master these skills, 3D printing automates much of the processing. You do need to be a little more proficient with the computer and mouse, but that's a lot easier to train nowadays than it is to being able to sprinkle acrylic.
Yeah,
And then this also lowers the need for a proportional staff that maybe is as proficient on their skills, and then, or maybe to get them up, it's going to take a lot longer to get them where they need to be as proficient as getting a 3D printer. And then the great thing is once you get one printer set up, if you're having a bottleneck on the printing, which you probably, eventually you do, it's easy to add on another printer. We
yeah,
we run about 15 printers in our lab now. We just got three more. We were at 12, now we're at 15 because we're getting so much busier. But it doesn't affect anything that we're doing in the processes in that aspect.
yeah.
Do you have anything to add on these reasons, Justin?
Well, I kind of wanted to kind of touch on something and kind of back up just a little bit, because I saw some of the services that you offer, right? One of them that stuck out to me, I see a lot of training online, right? So you have in our over 20 years of experience in the military, we were stationed training young dentists out of the residency to become proficient in digital dental dentistry. So how would a person that knows nothing about a trainer or educator especially these young guys or women coming out of their dental school, how do they understand, especially when you're providing the service of coaching and training, set your services apart from just another handsome face? What guarantees could come with your service to help with confidence to a provider, you know, compared to others? What do you bring to the table? I know what you bring to the table, but I want you to tell the people what you bring to the table compared to another person out here. It's like, oh, I know how to do Blue Sky Bio. Oh, I know how to Blue Sky Plan. Oh, I know how to do ExoCAD. But your services teach the provider actually how to get the most accurate information to you in your lab. And I think that's goes unnoticed sometimes, especially with Romanax, just from our background and teaching these young kids coming straight out of dental school.
I think you nailed it. Education it just goes hand in hand with our profession. I always used to tell our students that if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. So I think that a key component is obviously staying on top of the technology, and then taking the next step and educating your providers, their team members, educating other labs about this, which is why we're having the webinar here. And I think that that's a key component. That's another reason why 3D printing, it's a lot easier to learn the different processes of 3D printing and expand it than it is to pick up, let's say, if you're a fixed technician for many, many years doing crown and bridge, and then you switch to dentures. Well, it's a lot harder to pick up, that aspect when you're going from a crown and bridge section going to be a denturist or a RPD framework technician, let's say. Maybe there's some overlap there, of course, but it's going to take a steeper learning curve to do that. Now, if you're 3D printing a hard night guard, 3D printing a model, 3D printing a surgical guide, all three of those concepts are all pretty much the same. And as long as you educate yourself on those, it's easy to expand to other appliances, other restorations. We're going to touch a little bit about that more in our keys to success. And so that's where the trends are going. That's where everybody sees that's, if you haven't already been 3D printing, you're going to get there soon. And Justin, if you could hit the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this here. If you look at the 3D printing trends here, this is from the Journal of Dental Technology, this latest issue, between January and February of 2025. You can see there, that the survey that they conducted here, they had 344 responses, and then some key takeaways here. Over the past 6 years, an average of 93% of the dental labs that use 3D printers projected that their manufacturing will increase substantially or increase moderately. So that's 93% of the labs out there that are 3D printing see the trend that it's just going to get more and more digital and more 3D printing, as opposed to, let's say, like, milling, or you were doing pressable ceramics or pressable dentures at one point. It's leaning way more and more towards 3D printing because it's so much more efficient, because of those reasons we just talked about, and because it is a lot easier to learn and pick up. Another thing that stands out here is you look at the intraoral scans. Intraoral scans have increased from 12% in 2019 to 39% in 2024. So the trends are going to where everything is going more digital. I'll tell you now, in Romanax Dental Lab, Justin, you know this, we don't get any, hardly ever get any traditional models, impressions. Pretty much all of our workflows are 100% digital. I think the last model we got was probably 2 months ago, and then the one before that was like 3 months before then. So it's been a long time that we haven't been doing digital. I think we always started that in mind. So all of our scans come in, intraoral scans, CBCT scans, and then we process them out here. We'll discuss a little bit about that more in detail here on the next slide. But if you look at also, the things that dental labs are 3D printing, 74% of uh, of the labs out there are using it for 3D printing crown and bridge, and I think that's a telling point, because the crown and bridge models is a very, very hard skill set to learn and pick up. It's very hard, like you said, to take somebody off the street and put them in there and start, pouring up 6 unit veneers anterior, and having them slice out and trim out those models without having them break. So the industry sees that this is a very scalable, easy to learn solution for some complex tasks such as crown and bridge model work. Because if that's wrong, the whole thing is wrong. But 74% of labs are using that. And of course, with surgical guides, which is our bread and butter here at Romanax, 45% of labs are doing that, which means that there's a huge potential for growth. If only 45% of labs are doing that, and that's, 98% of our work here at Romanax is surgical guides, there's a huge need for that out there in the industry, and that's what we're here to help people out and help people learn a little bit. Is there anything else that stands out to you, Justin, in this
No,
survey?
I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's why your education, uh, your coaching, and the training that you're going to present to anybody that goes with Romanax is very important because yeah, you can see the growth numbers over on the scale. You can look up all this information. It's readily available. But you're doing a step further and like, hey, you come with us. We're going to help you understand what's coming in the future, how to be more innovative, how to get in front of the curve. It's not just about Romanex. It's about the providers out there that are trying to grow their clinics. They're especially their practice. If you really want to get involved and get into the on the front end of the curve of technology, this is kind of like where you need to start. I mean, and then you can decide if this is for you or not. But I can tell you right now, if I could stand in front of all those residents that think they know enough about digital dentistry, then I'll put them back in the chair and be like, yeah, nah, you got a long way to go, sir, man.
That's
Um,
funny.
so that brings me back to what you asked me earlier is like how as a provider and a lab support in a digital environment, I know most of the successful clinics out there um, have an almost one-on-one relationship. So how do you ensure that this happens in a digital environment? So when I say that is um, you have to bridge that gap, just like you're saying, you have to bridge the gap between the lab support and the provider to make sure that they have the best available appliance and treatment plan for the patient. So, how does Romanax obtain that, especially when you get a big case with 6 implants and the dentist sends you all the correct information over?
Hmm.
How do you bridge that gap with the provider?
So, this is a very, very good topic. It's a very good question. The way we do that is using a tried and true method, and in order to get from point A, which is the intraoral scan, to point B, which is a good restoration fitting, restoration or surgical guide appliance, whatever your processes are, it's going to be everything in the middle. How we get from point A to point B, if it's not standardized, if it's not repeatable, and if it's not easily replicatable, it's not going to be consistent, and it's not going to be good. So I think that's where Romanax succeeds, is getting that from intraoral scans to the final appliance restoration in a very consistent, repeatable manner. That doesn't, I mean, it takes skill to do that, but at the same time, we have it broken down into different steps and different keys to success, if you will. That's going to be our next slide. Justin, you helped me transition there, which I appreciate. So if you look at that, this is how we're going to make that happen here. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about some different steps and keys to get from point A to point B, and it all starts really with the scans. When we started out with the analog method, we were doing the models, and impressions. Like the impressions and the models, those had to be spot on, and those had to be the correct type, the correct accuracy. They had to be done in a very specific model, and it took a lot of time to master that. I think when I was at Lackland first learning model work, we did 6 month rotation in the stone room. And so 6 months, when you got out of basic, dental lab school, you went there for 6 months, and all you were doing is pouring up impressions, And it was good learning environment, but it was trial by fire because you had, I think, like, I don't know, 8 orthodontic residents, then you had like 12, general dentist residents, and then you had the prosthodontic residents. And then all in one afternoon, all of those sections were deciding to take impressions, for the different areas that they were learning. And so you'd have like 40, 50 impressions come back in one afternoon. It's you and another airman. You're like, yep, you gotta go to town. So you got very proficient very fast, but not everybody on the outside gets that opportunity. I think that's a very unique scenario in the military that we got to do that. On the outside, I don't think there's going to be a technician, regularly pouring 40 to 60 impressions in one afternoon. Maybe there is. Maybe
maybe,
like maybe
maybe,
maybe there is, like if you're Glidewell or something like that. But in essence, that was the key. If that foundation wasn't good, the rest of the lab couldn't function. And it's the same thing with the dental lab now in the digital environment. So their scan and inputs aren't correct. And let's specifically talk about surgical guides and restorations here. So if your scan and inputs aren't correct, let's say you don't have the correct CBCT scan, meaning if it's an open bite or a closed bite, you would typically want an open bite for like single units, 1 to 3 units. If you're doing a full arch case, like an all in X case, you would want a closed bite CBCT ideally most of the time. And then in the intraoral scan, same thing. You want to have a decent intraoral scanner. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we've come across every single scan out there basically that's on the market for intraoral scanning, and they all do a pretty decent job about getting a good scan and then getting the VDO in a correct closed environment to get you a good solid implant treatment plan or a restoration. When it comes to planning, so when we go from getting the right input scans, then we go to the next stage, which is planning. So we do the treatment planning in a very specific way. All of our technicians are trained in the exact same way, and they follow checklists, down the line. So it's repeatable, it's specific, and we make sure that nothing gets missed, including the drill kit verification. You know about this, Justin. We have to verify the kits because there's so many different drill kits out there. If we don't verify the kit, man, that's a game stopper. That's where you like push the button on the assembly line. You say, hold everything up. We have to verify this kit. We don't know if the doctor meant to put this in the script or if they put that. And if we've never used with that dentist before or that lab that uses that specific kit, we can't move forward. So
no,
so the worst scenarios that we see, and it happens very rare nowadays. It happened a little bit when we started out, but nowadays the worst scenario I can think of is when the patient's in the chair, they're numbed up, the doctors are already like flapped, let's say, expose some bone, place the guide, and then they go to drill. Next thing you know, the guide tube doesn't fit that drill. And the doctor's like, what do I do at this point? Well, now I have to go traditional. What was the point of using this guide to begin with? All that hard work ahead of time. So drill kit verification is very, very important when it comes to treatment planning, and using the correct metal sleeves that coincide with that kit. Then you have the
but
doctor.
I was going
Yep,
to stop you there for a second. Like, especially when it comes to the tubes and the verification point of it. I know, just kind of looking over how you do things, you have a drill report and a video that goes along with it. And sometimes on complex cases, you actually have a meeting with the dentist or the provider to make sure everything is correct before it even goes out the door.
absolutely, absolutely. Remember, we were talking about that communication between the dentist, the technician, and of course the patient. That's key. So a lot of the times, especially if they're a new doctor, or a new lab, what we'll do is we'll set up a virtual meeting. And just like we're meeting right here, we'll set up a virtual meeting where they can see their plan. We can make any live updates. We can verify the kit, verify the sub implant, take a look at any areas that need to be of concern, such as nerves, the sinus, the walls, adjacent roots, all that kind of stuff. If it's a new doctor, and if it's a complex case, we recommend doing a one-on-one case meeting, a virtual review, and our technicians are very good about doing that. Typically they take anywhere between 5 minutes to 15 minutes, unless it's like a full arch case, then you're probably looking a little bit longer than that. But those meetings are invaluable to getting a right product at the end of the day. If we don't get those inputs and that doctor's input in there, as well as their approval for the case, we can't move forward. It's
Right.
another red flag that if they don't approve the case, we can't go to processing. Or if they approve the case and then they think about something else later on, we move it back to planning and got to start at that step again. So yeah,
Yeah.
you can't move forward from these steps without actually getting that step completed. Very good point. I appreciate that, Justin.
Yeah. No problem. Because I know that a couple of the meetings that we had with some providers out in California, and we were in Florida, that's all the way across the country. Um, and the feedback that we received, we were spot on. And he was like, "Oh, good point." because a lot of it as a dental lab technician, we may see things a provider may not, especially if it's a new provider, like somebody fresh out of residency, just got out of their periodontal residency or their, maxillofacial, um, which a lot of people don't know that we do have that in the Air Force. And Wright Pat and the places we were assigned and where we led labs, we were in charge of some of these people that did the more complex facial reconstruction. And so there's a little bit more to it than just, we've just been old seasoned lab techs. We've seen just about anything and everything. And, when it comes to those fighter pilot masks, we had that information and had that, we knew what physics would play a role in when you're talking about G forces. So a lot of that training is very beneficial to us, and we're trying to give it back. So,
Yeah, I think you touched on a good topic there too, because when we're doing these treatment planning reviews with the dentist, we're not just looking at the implant where the implant. Let's just talk about surgical guides. We're not just looking at the implant where the implant needs to go. That's what the dentist is really focused on. We're going to get that where it needs to go, but we'll take it to the next step. So there's the metal cylinder that goes around the implant, above the implant, if you will, and we take a look at where that's sitting at the current implant position. Is there an adjacent tooth that's going to interfere? Is there going to be gingival that's going to interfere? Is there going to be bone that's going to need to be profiled or reduced before you seat the guide? So all that kind of stuff is taken care of at that meeting with the doctor, that dental provider. And if it's not addressed at that point, it's the same thing, same scenario, worst case scenario. The patient's in the chair, the guide doesn't fit. Now maybe it's the right tube, but now the guide doesn't fit because of the adjacent tooth. And then what's that doctor going to do? Is he going to reduce an adjacent tooth that's like healthy in order to get this guy to fit? Probably not the best option. Are they going to reduce the bone to get that to fit? And is that fully seated at that point? So there's just a lot of scenarios that we look at during those case reviews that are invaluable. And most of the time we don't charge for those case reviews. It's just a free service that we provide because it's going to make the product at the end of the day, the experience for that surgeon or that dentist that's placing the implant so much better. And it's a win-win-win all the way around. We love to take those 5-15 minutes of the day to make sure that case and that implant, that guide is going to be a successful case. Very, very good point, Justin. And that's going to take us to design. So when we're designing these guides, we're taking those items into consideration. When we're designing the restorations, we're taking that into consideration. And specifically, we're talking about implant supported restorations, which is our next growing product line. So those guides have to be designed in a way where they're not interfering with adjacent teeth, they're not interfering with gingiva, they're not interfering with the bone. And if they're not done that way, then again, we get to that scenario that we don't like to be in. It's good to use the correct design software. We use Blue Sky Plan for the majority of our cases, but we're also looking at other options as well. We're looking at Real Guide 3D. We've tried the 3Shape. We're working on taking a look at that, and then ExoCAD is our next option. We're looking at ExoPlan. But to be honest with you, the vast majority of our cases are with Blue Sky Plan, and that is a fabulous software. What I like about it is that it's free to use, it's free to try out, and they only charge you when you're exporting a case. So what that enables Romanax to do is it enables to empower our dentists out there and our other labs that we work with that are doing guides. It enables them to get that software for free, take a look at their plan in a 360-degree 3D environment, and then make any changes that they need, save that, and send it to us. And that's all a free service using Blue Sky Plan, which is makes it really, really scalable and a very efficient use. Um, Lastly, before we finalize the design, is making sure our parameters are the same. Parameters, parameters, parameters. So in order for our parameters to be exact, what we need them to be when you go to the 3D printing side of it, is we need to verify that like multiple stages. So there's different parameters that we discuss when we do training with anybody. The two main ones that you want to look at are the guide offset, meaning how much space is between the dental model or the teeth and the actual guide that you're 3D printing. That is printer specific. A lot of people don't realize that you can't. I mean, if you get lucky, you might get lucky, but most of the time, you can't take a parameter for a Formlabs printer and use it on a sprint rate printer and then use it again on the Straumann printer or a different printer out there. Each printer, each resin is going to have its own parameters. It's not so much so on the models per se, but specifically on anything that's going to be sitting on top of another appliance or another restoration or teeth. Those parameters are key. And there's also parameters for the tubes. So every cylinder, every metal sleeve that you use for every kit is going to have its own parameter built into it. And if those parameters aren't right, then what you're going to have to do is either the tube's going to be too loose and it's going to be sitting around in that guide tube that you designed, which is not good because then you're losing the accuracy, or it's going to be too tight and that cylinder is not going to fit inside that plastic resin, and then you're thinking, oh well, I'll just take a little burr and open it up, and then you're losing all your accuracy there at the end of the day that you worked so hard to get. So our parameters are set to where a tenth of a micron, you get that guide that's been designed. You take that metal sleeve and it slides right in without any resistance, any force, and it fits. It fits amazing. The 3D printers take all the variation out of it. If you're trying to do that with traditional acrylic, where you're sprinkling and mixing, you just can't get that kind of accuracy. Milling can get you that accuracy. However, you spend $50,000 on a milling machine to mill out a surgical guide. It's not very efficient and it's not very scalable. So that's my thoughts on design. Do you have anything to add on design, Justin?
I don't. I think you covered it very well. I always go back to when we get into designing, um, it you have to have the proper training to actually understand what tool sets. Like if you take Blue Sky Plan, I know it's user friendly by most, especially when the doc comes in and goes, all right, I'm using this drill, I want this offset, um, and then you open up Blue Sky Plan and it's not in there sometimes, or you have to make the adjustments and make it in a custom, right? And so that's why I kind of go back to it. You have to get comfortable, especially from a dental lab perspective. If you're just starting out, it can be very daunting. And I think providers, when they figure out that the amount of knowledge needed to communicate that to their dental lab support team, whoever they choose, um, if they're not very well versed in that kind of communication and what is going to work for this surgical guide, it can be it's a big bite to bite off. Like it's huge. So yeah, I think you covered it very well, especially when you were talking about offsets and having a doc go in and the drill doesn't fit. But yeah, anything else you want to add to that one?
No, no. Yeah, I think that the design software and the design parameters are key. Are key. If you don't get that right, you might as well not go to print. And specifically with surgical guides, what we learned here is that you need to know that kit. You need to know that surgical kit inside and out. It's easy if the software is including that kit in its preset parameters. That's kind of preset. That's not hard. It's hard when that kit is not in the software, like you said. Those custom settings. If you're using custom settings with Blue Sky Plan, you need to know the drill lengths. You need to know the drill diameters, and you need to know what the guide sleeve you're going to be using is. I just had a call the other day with a sales rep, and I was explaining to him and his customer, who was a dentist. They were getting ready to do, I think, a 4 unit denture locator case, and he said, I don't understand why I have to use a 13 millimeter drill. Let's say, for example, he's like, the sales rep was like, I don't understand why I have to use a 13 millimeter drill to place an 11 millimeter implant. And I had to explain to him. I said, hey, in order to avoid any seating issues with the guide, we have to use longer drills and we have to use custom settings. And it didn't resonate with him that, hey, I have to use a longer drill because we're raising the offset of that tube. And so he was very unsure, very confused. But as far as we know, the surgery went well, went without a hitch. They used the parameters and the custom settings that we informed them, and at the end of the day, they got a good product, good result. So it's just educating some of the sales reps that maybe aren't familiar with using custom settings. I think that's where Romanax really leads the industry in being compatible with any surgical kit, any system out there that's on the market, because we do a lot of research ahead of time before we finish that case. And so after we got all that dialed in, it takes us over to print. And then, 3D printing at the end of the day, that part of it is pretty simple. If you've done the first three steps, printing is just rinse and repeat, almost literally. So you're going to get your 3D printed part, you're going to rinse it out in the isopropyl alcohol more often than not. Again, always follow your manufacturer's instructions. After you wash the parts, usually you do a 2 cycle wash. If you're not doing a 2 cycle wash, usually you need to do a 2 cycle wash. Again, this will be instructed in your resin manufacturer instructions. We like to use the Formlabs washing units, but there's a lot of different washing units out there. At the end of the day, as long as you're agitating that washing medium while it's washing the parts, you're gonna be okay. Um, and I know that's come a long way, because when I first started 3D printing, I don't know if you were doing it, Bricklen, but we had like a Tupperware thing, and we were shaking the Tupperware for like 2 minutes, And so nowadays, all that's been automated. It's really easy to wash stuff nowadays, considering where we came from. Um, and then curing, make sure you use the right curing machines. There's different curing machines out in the market. For that specific resin, you need to follow those instructions to a T. A lot of times, if you don't wash correctly and if you don't cure properly, another step in there that I forgot to mention is always make sure your parts are dry. If your parts aren't dry, using some compressed air or letting them out to dry, it can distort the guides, or have an effect that you will not like on your restorations if you're 3D printing restorations. So always follow those instructions carefully, and yeah, you're going to be set up for success. After you get those parts, removing the supports, you know, that's pretty easy. Smooth them out with the burr. That takes less than 5 minutes per guide. And then inserting that tube. If you got the correct parameters dialed in, if you follow the correct design settings and everything like that, design principles that we teach, then the tube should slide right in. That's another thing that we teach our technicians. If that tube, that metal cylinder that's been pre-designed for that specific kit, does not slide right into where it needs to go, then
And they
that's
watched it enough. Yep.
yeah, that's a flag. That's a stop all production on that case and verify, because we need to go back to the design settings and make sure everything's correct.
Yep.
So that's another thing that we teach. Don't just automatically go in there and open things up and make it fit. No, there you got to figure out why that happened, and more often than not, it's a parameter that wasn't adjusted, and so we need to reprint that. It's much easier to reprint the guide with the correct parameters than it is to make that tube fit, send it out, and now you have an implant that's perforating a buccal wall or
Yep.
into the sinus or something going array. So we much rather 3D print, redesign it, or reprint it, and then after it, that sleeve kind of fits in like it should, then we're secure that plan, everything goes with the success that we like it to go. Anything else we need to add on this, Justin?
Well, I think we gave them a lot of information. It's like taking a fire hose and turning it wide open, right? You said drink, drink.
Yeah.
So with that, let's just go ahead and break it down very, very simple for everyone, providers, dental lab techs, everyone. Okay, with this question, since you've been in the civilian sector and you've been doing surgical guides, and it sounds like a lot of information. It sounds like a lot of processes, a lot of verification, a lot of stop checks, quality control. What is the fastest turnaround time that you've noticed since you've been doing this on your own?
So yeah, that's a really good question. Our workflow is pretty fast. I think we're probably the fastest turnaround times for surgical guides. If not up there, one of the fastest. So if we get a scan in on a Monday, let's say 8 a.m., we get a scan in on a Monday at 8 a.m. The doctor's gonna have a plan ready to review by 8 a.m. the next day on Tuesday. Now, that's not the fastest offer service that we offer, So if they get a plan, like we have a rush service, let's say they get a scan to us 8 a.m. They're gonna have a plan ready to approve by noon. and we can get that guide printed, shipped out via next day, so you can have the guide in hand the next day through our rush services. But our typical workflow, this is our typical workflow. So that's our rush. You can have it next day. You can have a guide in your hand the next day. If you're 3D printing in your own clinic or your own lab, we can do the guide same day. Meaning, you've sent us the scans, we'll plan it, design it, and then send that STL file for you to print same day. So we have that ability. For the typical dentist, let's say the one that's ordering out of a different state, they'll get the scans in on a Monday. They'll get the approval the next morning, 8 a.m. on a Tuesday. If they approve it that day, then it'll ship out on Wednesday. So that's a 3-day workflow, 3-day turnaround time on average. That's our standard. If you want same day, we have that available. If you have a 3D printer, if you want next day, we have that option for next day rush services as well. It'll ship out that same day, so you can have it in your hand, ready for surgery on a Tuesday. So that option is available too. Um, and that
But
and
if
that
you're doing, but if you were doing it traditional, how long do you think that would take?
you know traditional
Uh,
traditional method. If you're rushing it, maybe a week, maybe two. So it just, could
Can't
I
compare.
do it traditional if I spent 8 hours, nothing else, doing a guide start to finish, like the way we used to do it? Yeah, I could do it in 8 hours and ship, but that's not scalable, and it's gonna.
That's when the lab prosthodontist is like, you will get this done. You're not going home. You're going to make this happen.
Right, right. We could do it, and in the military, I think
You're going to make it happen.
you're gonna make it happen. I was doing an implant case for this fighter pilot that was deploying the next day. This was when I was in Japan, and my wife can attest to this because she was there. So we had this fighter pilot. He was getting an implant put in on a Friday, and he was flying out on Monday. And I did the 4 implants. There were custom abutments, and one of the custom abutments didn't seat. So I had to redo it, and it was already like 2 p.m. when I found out I had to redo it. So I was there till 12:30 a.m. that night finishing that case, and it was out. That pilot got seen that Saturday by the dentist. The dentist came in on Saturday, got that. It was 4 implants, so that fourth one went in. He got it seated, and that pilot deployed on a Monday. So if in the military, you're gonna make it happen. And I was there till midnight. My wife was there hanging out with me in the lab, finishing that case up. This was when we were in Japan, and North Korea was like launching ICBMs over Japan. This is back circa like 2009, and they had a contingency thing where the pilots had to go over to South Korea to deploy. And it was last minute thing. They weren't expecting it, but that pilot needed to go. And at that point in time, you got to make it happen, Justin. You
Like
know
you're
this.
you're not leaving,
So
and your
yeah,
wife has to bring you food. And like when you coming home, your
yeah,
daughter
yeah,
says, "Where's dad?" You're like,
yeah.
try to make it happen. We
Luckily, it was
make it
before our daughter was born. It was just my wife over there, but she's very supportive. She's always been very supportive. She's amazing when it comes to supporting Romanax. She's one of our team members as well. But you know how it is. You
Yeah.
gotta make you're gonna do what you gotta do. So you're
Yep.
gonna get the mission happen. On the surveillance sector, it's hard to have one of your team members stay till midnight to make sure a case gets shipped out. Probably wouldn't fly.
Wouldn't fly.
That's
How
probably
much you
not gonna
gonna pay
happen.
me to make me stay here to get this done? Yeah, not
Yeah,
gonna happen.
yeah. So yeah, that's our typical workflow is 3 days on average for a regular case. Same day services are available for rush cases. With that in mind, we'll talk a little bit about how a dental treatment provider or a dental provider or a lab tech can get started here. We've got some great options right here that are going to expand on this webinar. If you're looking to get into 3D printing and you're looking to really get started, I recommend doing models first. Models, 3D printing models is a very low hanging fruit, and you can get started. We have a package together, it includes training for under $1,000. So under $1,000, you can get a model 3D printer. It's not going to have all the bells and whistles that you might expect like a $10,000 printer to have, such as the ones that are out there in the market. Those are amazing printers. But if you're looking just to get started and get going, the $1,000 printers can get you a decent models, and they're used for hobbyists all the time. You can use them for figurines. You can use them for like different type of applications, such as making fasteners for yourself. There's a lot of different reasons why you use a 3D printer around this range, but the quality is really, really good on those printers. They start at like 40 micron accuracy and then go up from there. So that's for models, you can't beat that deal. If you're looking to learn more about 3D printing, specifically surgical guides, we have a surgical guide course on how to get from point A to point B. You can take a look at our courses at our website under romanax.com/courses. We also offer one-on-one training, Justin, like you mentioned. You would be one-on-one with one of our technicians. And then also there's another resource out there. And so on the left, there's a kind of like the paid resources, the digital, the implant educators. That's an amazing resource. Dr. Rick Ferguson, he's one of the leaders in 3D printing when it comes to the dental field. I believe he leads that up, and please check that out if you want to really get an extensive course. I know they do an awesome job over there. On the right side, we've got some free resources, and if you really want to get started, these are free. You can do this anytime. The Facebook dental printing group, if you're not in that group right now, join that group. It's free to join. They have some great people in there. They put some amazing tutorials in there as well. And then on YouTube, if you haven't checked out Dr. Corey Glenn's YouTube channel, man, he's like the godfather of this kind of workflow for surgical guides. Same thing with Baron Gruder, Dr. Baron Gruder. He's amazing too. Look at their channels, because that's where I got a lot of inspiration for our workflows and for Romanax Dental Lab as well. And then ask us about a free case. If you're a new client looking to get into 3D printing, or just looking to get some really good surgical guides at a great price, look us up. Our contact info is right here. We do offer free surgical guides for new clients, and then a free case for anybody that's looking to try us out as a lab.
And that's really big too. So not only are we trying to tell the public like we are who we are, but we're willing to put money where our mouth
Yeah,
is when it comes to a free case. If you doubt it, try it out for a free case. Let me tell you what, uh, you'll be very very impressed,
yeah.
especially with the group of individuals that we have. So
Absolutely, Justin. I think it's risk free. You have nothing to lose, but everything to gain. You know, and I love working with new doctors that maybe their experience with using surgical guides haven't been all that great. And they're a little skeptical about using a surgical guide, and then investing, a few extra bucks to make sure their case goes well. But once they get on board, they don't look back. And then they start with one case, and then next thing you know, I'm getting like half a dozen cases a week from them, if not more, or very quickly. And we'd love to see that, because, at the end of the day, they're able to provide a better care for their patients. They're able to streamline their processes and reduce stress and the headaches without using a guide. So there's just so many benefits to 3D printing and using a guide. And yeah, so I really appreciate you, Justin, for mentioning that.
no problem.
All
All
right, we're
right,
gonna
so
close.
here's our information. So if you have any questions, you got the email up there, or Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, even the phone number. I still miss the 850 area code.
You missed the
Emerald
Florida area
Coast,
code.
Emerald
Yes.
Coast, where the magic happens. You know
Now
what I'm
you're
saying?
at the 719. I still have my 719 number for my personal line.
Oh, 719, no oxygen.
Call my
850
experience.
Emerald Coast. There we go.
Well, I appreciate you, Justin, and we're gonna close out here. Thank you all for tuning in, and then we'll catch you on the next webinar. Be on the lookout for the next webinar coming next month. Thank you all.